According to legend, the sun seemed to dance in the sky. It zigzagged all over, spun around, and even plunged towards the earth. For about 10 minutes, the sun did all sorts of weird things, leaving the masses below both awestruck and terrified. This event is now known as the miracle of the sun.
On October 13, 1917, in a remote valley in Portugal, 70,000 people stood beneath torrential rain and witnessed an event that shook the foundations of both religion and physics. The sun appeared to dance, plunge toward the earth, then return to its place, leaving the crowd's rain-soaked clothing suddenly dry within moments. For more than a century, the world has treated this as either a divine miracle or a massive episode of collective hallucination. But what if both systems of knowledge have been missing a critical piece of data? The latest technologies are beginning to reveal a different truth, that these so-called miracles are not spiritual in nature, but signals that the world we inhabit operates far more intricately than modern science has been willing to admit. The order of conventional understanding for more than a century. The events at Fatima in 1917 have been confined within an uncompromising standoff between two of humanity's largest systems of knowledge, theology and psychology. Official records preserved by the Catholic Church describe the phenomenon as a sacred message from heaven, a direct intervention of the supernatural into the material world intended to reinforce faith. By contrast, scientific critics and Western academic circles have long invoked collective hallucination or psychological suggestion, arguing that the pressure of religious expectation led tens of thousands of people to see something that did not objectively exist. Within this older framework of understanding, every phenomenon had to be labeled either sacred or delusional. There was no room for a third possibility, because both sides rested on the same assumption that reality was a fixed constant and that human beings were merely neutral observers of it. Yet when the detailed testimonies of eyewitnesses present at the scene are examined more closely, a specific physical detail begins to open the first crack in this rigid classification. Those present did not describe light alone. They reported a sudden shift in temperature and humidity. Immediately after the sun-like object withdrew, the muddy ground beneath the crowd and the rain-soaked clothing they wore became unexpectedly dry and warm. If this had been a purely psychological hallucination, it could not have produced a transfer of heat powerful enough to evaporate thousands of liters of water in less than 10 minutes. Such a thermal effect requires a real material energy source acting directly on the molecular structure of the surrounding environment, far beyond the reach of mental suggestion. The presence of this thermodynamic data forces us to acknowledge that something did in fact occur within physical space. Yet it carried characteristics that neither scripture nor the physics textbooks of the era could adequately explain. The failure of older knowledge systems to classify the Fatima phenomenon is not an isolated case. At the Grotto of Lourdes in France or the region of Medjugorje in Bosnia, reports of strange lights and instantaneous healings are consistently accompanied by unexplained physical changes in the air and the ground itself. Independent investigators have observed that whenever an apparition is reported, simple mechanical instruments such as compasses or pendulum clocks tend to behave erratically or stop altogether. This points toward the presence of an intense electromagnetic or gravitational influence, a form of raw data that lies beyond the boundaries of religious doctrine and traditional laboratory science. These overlooked physical signals do more than weaken hallucination-based explanations. They reveal a troubling coincidence. Sites associated with miracles often sit at intersections of geological faults or within regions of unusually high magnetic anomalies. Rather than viewing miracles as isolated events grounded solely in belief, a pattern begins to emerge, a systematic interaction between the physical environment and human perception. The cracks in the old classification system are widening, suggesting that truth may not reside in choosing between God or madness, but in understanding the nature of the space in which we stand. Cracks in the classification system. The interaction between environment and perception becomes clearer when magnetometers and ionization sensors are brought to sites of reported apparitions. In locations long regarded as sacred, concentrations of ionized particles in the air are often measured at levels far above normal, creating an unstable electronic environment capable of directly influencing the human nervous system. These are no longer vague suppositions. Reports from geophysical research teams in areas such as Apparition Hill have documented magnetic field fluctuations that vary in cyclical patterns, resembling the slow breathing of the Earth itself. Strangely, these variations do not follow the rules of ordinary geological activity. Instead, they appear to be triggered by some external factor, forming localized pockets of energy within space. Witnesses to miraculous events frequently describe a deep vibration felt in their bones or low-frequency sounds they refer to as thunder from nowhere just before an apparition appears. Research into extremely low-frequency sound waves suggests that such vibrations can resonate with the human eyeball, producing blurred images or streaks of light in the visual field, while also stimulating the temporal lobe to generate a sense of an otherworldly presence. Yet this acoustic explanation encounters a serious obstacle when confronted with visual data. In several modern cases, infrared cameras have recorded spherical heat formations suspended in mid-air at the exact locations where visionaries or worshippers claim to see an entity. This implies that while part of the experience may be explained through biology, the core of the phenomenon remains a material structure measurable by thermal sensors. This contradiction places scientists in an uneasy position. The data indicates that the phenomenon is both subjective within the brain and objective within the environment. Using our current system of knowledge, we would be forced to conclude that reality itself is being selectively distorted. Why would a luminous entity appear only to 3 children at Fatima, yet its thermal energy be sufficient to dry the clothes of 70,000 people nearby? Why do measuring instruments register electromagnetic disturbances that align precisely with the moment witnesses enter a trance-like state? These questions suggest that we are observing an organized underlying infrastructure, a form of technology, or a natural law operating beneath the surface of religious symbolism. The presence of consistent physical parameters across sites separated by thousands of miles from Lourdes to Fatima, from Guadalupe to the ancient temples of Egypt, suggests that these are not random incidents. There is a technical repetition in the way these miracles unfold. Geomagnetic maps reveal that many of these locations lie along distinctive features of the Earth's crust, where the boundary between dimensions appears thinner. Older systems of knowledge concealed this mechanical reality beneath layers of myth. But as modern data scanning technologies intervene, the mask begins to peel away. What we find are no traces of angelic wings, but unfamiliar frequency bands and binary signal codes being transmitted through the material layers of reality itself. Data scanning into the forbidden zone. The introduction of LiDAR scanning technology, light detection and ranging, together with a new generation of fMRI brainwave sensors, officially pushed the investigation beyond the boundaries of faith and straight into the core of raw data. When researchers used LiDAR to scan caves where apparitions had once been reported, they did not find spiritual entities. Instead, they detected anomalies in the density of the air itself, at specific coordinates where miracles were said to occur. LiDAR laser pulses scattered in ways that conventional optical theory could not predict, rather than passing through empty space. The laser light appeared to collide with an invisible structure, a dense network of extremely compressed energy particles, forming knots within space and time. At the same time, when individuals experiencing visionary states were placed inside fMRI scanners, the results stunned the neuroscience community. Their parietal and temporal lobes did not simply activate as they do during dreams or ordinary hallucinations. Instead, their brains were processing enormous volumes of information at speeds far beyond the computational capacity of the typical human cortex. Gamma waves, associated with the integration of complex information, surged to extreme thresholds, reaching frequency ranges usually observed only during states of intense focus or powerful biochemical transformation. This suggested that their brains were not generating images internally, but were struggling to decode an external stream of signals flowing inward through the energy pockets detected by LiDAR. The convergence between LiDAR spatial scans and fMRI brain data pointed toward a startling reality. What we call a miracle is a process of data transmission between environment and human perception. An unfamiliar frequency band, absent from any known natural source on Earth, was recorded by ultra-sensitive audio equipment at these sites. This signal was not random noise. It carried a repeating rhythmic structure, bearing the characteristics of binary code or a digital communication protocol. When artificial intelligence algorithms began analyzing these sequences, they identified patterns corresponding to fundamental mathematical constants of the universe, arranged according to a logic unlike anything found in human programming languages. The emergence of this code within the so-called empty space of sacred sites transformed the entire investigation from spiritual inquiry into technical analysis. The question was no longer whether apparitions were real. The question became who or what was transmitting this code. At first, the investigation progressed slowly and cautiously. Yet the persistent appearance of these anomalous frequency bands began to overwhelm the error correction routines of measuring instruments. Thermal imaging sensors started recording sudden shifts in the refractive index of light at hotspot locations, producing a luminous halo effect around the sites where entities appeared. This was not sunlight reflecting through mist. It was evidence that spatial density itself was being compressed to the point where passing light was bent. Another layer of reality was attempting to compress itself into our own, and what humans perceive as miracles are the sensory consequences of that compression failing or leaking data. The discovery of reality intrusion. As researchers examined the nature of this light-bending effect, they realized that the halos depicted in ancient religious artwork were, in fact, accurate physical descriptions of a complex optical phenomenon. At locations where entities appeared, space was no longer a passive void, it became a vast lens. The sudden compression of spatial density forced light to curve rather than travel in straight lines, producing radiant glows and visual distortions that observers described as divine beauty or supernatural splendor, through the lens of spectroscopic instruments. However, this was a signature of reality intrusion, a process in which a higher density data system spills into a lower density one, much like a drop of ink dispersing through water. This intrusion did not occur chaotically. Artificial intelligence analysis of the captured signals revealed that the encoded patterns aligned precisely with the geometric structures of ancient monuments, such as the Great Pyramid at Giza and the stone temples of Stonehenge. These sites appeared not merely as monuments, but as receivers designed to stabilize these breaches in reality. When sensors captured the raw data structure, a strange correspondence emerged. The messages of apparitions, often conveyed as prophecies or doctrines, were only the surface layer of a far deeper exchange of information. Spoken words were simply the human brain's attempt to compress a vast volume of technical data into a form that language could contain. The true shock came when researchers discovered that, at the moment an apparition occurred, time at that location appeared to slow or stretch. Atomic clocks placed at these hotspots recorded deviations measured in nanoseconds when compared to clocks located several miles away. This is a direct consequence of relativity. Where immense energy density bends space, time is altered as well. This explains why many witnesses felt as though they remained within the vision for hours, while external observation showed the event lasting only minutes. This was not a spiritual sensation. It was a physical fact. We are witnessing the operation of space and time control technology at a level humanity has never imagined. The nature of the reality we inhabit begins to reveal itself in a new form. It resembles a fragile user interface layered over a vast mechanical operating system. What we call miracles are not exceptions to natural law, but moments when that system exposes its background processes. Luminous entities are not spirits from heaven, but data structures encoded into tangible matter in order to interact with the human brain. The danger lies here. As we use technology to see through this outer layer, we also discover that the system beneath it does not operate according to human concepts of morality or compassion. It runs on the logic of data, energy, and system optimization alone. When miracles are a glitch, our entire framework of understanding is now turned upside down. Instead of viewing saints or supernatural beings as saviors, we are forced to consider the possibility that they are synchronization errors within the fabric of reality itself. In computer science, a glitch occurs when there is a conflict between source code and hardware, or when a stream of data is processed incorrectly, causing images to distort or unfamiliar symbols to appear on a screen. In the same way, the visions at Fatima or Lourdes may be moments when the underlying infrastructure of the universe becomes exposed due to an energy overload or a technical failure in maintaining the surface layer of physical reality. Those described as blessed or gifted visionaries are not chosen by a deity. They are individuals whose brains possess resonance frequencies compatible with these leaking data streams. Imagine the human brain as an old-fashioned radio. Most of us can receive only the standard channels of three-dimensional reality, yet due to a biological mutation or a unique chemical structure in the temporal lobe, a small number of individuals can tune into interference signals from the operating system beneath. When they see a saint, what they are actually perceiving are fragments of source code escaping through energy breaches. The messages they receive are simply the brain's attempt to translate the universe's error messages into moral narratives it can comprehend. This hypothesis explains why miracles are often accompanied by material anomalies, such as objects appearing from nowhere or liquids changing their properties. Within a glitched environment, fundamental physical laws like the conservation of mass may be temporarily suspended. These are moments when the source code of reality is overwritten by a stronger data system. Miraculous healings are not acts of blessing, but localized correction processes, where the biological code of the patient is resynchronized with a more perfect template from the core operating system. This correction, however, is never without cost. It often leaves behind energetic aftershocks in the environment, creating zones of magnetic instability that can persist for decades. The most unsettling implication is this: if reality is an operating system and miracles are system errors, then we are not the owners of this world. We are programs running inside a pre-designed environment. Every time a miracle is recorded, a corresponding modification has been made to the source code of the timeline we inhabit. Reality is far less stable than we assume. It is constantly adjusted, refined, and at times directly altered by a force operating behind the system. What we call faith is little more than reverence for technical anomalies we cannot understand, while the true nature of that presence is a vast mechanical logic, cold, precise, and unyielding. The silence of the sensors. As technology-driven investigation pushed deeper into decoding these fragments of reality code, another strange phenomenon emerged. The system began to defend itself. Laboratories involved in analyzing data from miracle zones reported incidents that defied explanation. Hard drives containing raw data were suddenly wiped clean, or files devolved into meaningless characters just as researchers prepared to announce major findings. At first, suspicion fell on intelligence agencies or secret religious organizations. But when even the most advanced cybersecurity measures failed, a more troubling conclusion emerged. No human entity was responsible. Reality itself was self-correcting, erasing its own traces. At apparition sites, when scientists installed the highest resolution instruments available, anomalous signals abruptly vanished, or shifted into frequency ranges beyond the reach of existing equipment. This resembled the observer effect in quantum physics, where observing a system alters its state. Yet here, the change was not random. It appeared deliberate, aimed at preventing any entity within the system from understanding the true structure of its source code. Sensors suddenly recorded dense layers of white noise that obscured critical discoveries. And leading scientists often experienced localized memory loss or suffered unexplained accidents just before major conferences. This obstruction did not resemble punishment or hostility. It behaved more like a firewall within an operating system. When a process inside reality attempts to access system directories beyond its permission level, security protocols activate automatically to isolate and eliminate the breach. Miracles became rarer or changed character precisely as we began to grasp their physical mechanisms. Humanity now finds itself in a position of quiet despair. We live inside a cage whose bars are designed to become invisible the moment we try to touch them. The final data recovered from a covert monitoring station reveals a disturbing trend. Even as our sensors are blinded, the background energy intensity of sacred zones continues to rise steadily. The system appears to be expending increasing amounts of energy to maintain the surface layer of reality under pressure from human technology. Miracles are occurring more frequently, but in more remote regions, as if the system is attempting a large-scale reset or an infrastructure upgrade to seal its vulnerabilities. The silence of the sensors is not evidence that nothing is happening. It is evidence that we have reached the final boundary of what is permitted to be known within this system of understanding. The source code of faith. Faced with this body of evidence and its systematic resistance, we are forced to accept an answer that no traditional system of knowledge has dared to confront. New technology does not expose religion as deception, nor does it prove the absolute authority of science. It reveals the true position of humanity as occupants confined within a locked knowledge system. What we have long called faith is, in truth, a subconscious human acknowledgement of a far greater mechanical order governing the world. Saints, angels, and luminous entities are interface constructs generated by the system itself, designed to communicate with or regulate human perception without causing the total collapse of reality's structure. A colder truth comes into focus. We are not blessed beings, but components within a system that is continuously monitored and adjusted. Miracles are the only error notifications we are capable of perceiving through the fog of matter. When we kneel before an apparition, we are in fact kneeling before our own source code, a sequence to which we have no access and which we can never alter. The physical reality we cling to, with its homes, cities, and even its laws of physics, is merely a fragile graphical interface designed to keep the human mind stable and occupied. Every miraculous healing, every precise prophecy, is an instance in which the system executes a right command into our timeline, redirecting the fate of humanity along an optimized path beyond our comprehension. This realization offers neither comfort nor salvation. It leaves behind a chilling after-effect, revealing how small and passive we truly are. We did not set out to find God. We accidentally discovered the control panel of a vast machine, of which we ourselves are a component. The next time you hear of a miracle occurring somewhere in the world, resist the impulse to choose immediately between faith and skepticism. Ask yourself instead whether it is truly a blessing from heaven, or a sign that your reality system has just encountered a critical error. Do you choose the gentle spiritual meaning that offers a false sense of peace? Or do you have the courage to face the stark lines of source code now emerging before you, reminding you that you are only a variable within a vast algorithm that leaves no room for freedom? The truth does not lie in what you see. It lies in the way reality itself is struggling to prevent you from seeing it.